thank the subcommittee again for holding a hearing on these three important bills. I look forward to answering any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. I thank witnesses for the testimony, and we'll now recognize members for 5 minutes each for questions. Mr. Graves, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Director Garret, it's good to see you again. I'm not sure who's sacrificing you and for what purpose today, but good to have you back in the committee again. He often shows up as a sacrificial lamb for the department. I actually, Mr. Cochran, I want to thank you for being here and appreciate your testimony and appreciate your independence in your thought today. I want to ask you a couple of questions. Number one, you've spent a lot of time working on environmental issues and working in coastal Louisiana, but you made mention in your testimony of other large-scale ecological restoration efforts like Everglades, Chesapeake Bay, Great Lakes. Could you reflect and share perhaps your opinion on kind of looking at the ecological significance of coastal Louisiana and the urgency that we're facing there compared to some of these other areas and projects, and if you think that this effort for restoration in Louisiana is deserving of a comprehensive effort and some type of expedited or urgency in the effort here?
Well, it won't surprise you. It won't surprise you that yes, I do think it's critical for us to do that. One of the special things about the Gulf Coast, particularly around the Mississippi Delta, is that there's a phrase that was used years ago in a book about habitat called the seams of nature, where the freshwater and saltwater come together to create these estuaries. And they are magical for life in terms of the ability to sustain habitat particularly for fisheries. And one of the fun things about Louisiana, if you like to fish, is that you can literally go out and catch a freshwater bass and a saltwater redfish on the same day in the same area. And that speaks to the sort of uniqueness of the area from a habitat perspective. That is not only valuable to Louisiana. Congressman, I'm not quite sure how to compare and contrast the other areas around the country that...
You can just say we're better.
What's that?
I said you can just say we're better.
That's right, but it is a magical part of the world that is in grave danger, and I think it is a great time to be focusing on it now that we have some resources that have begun to restore what we are losing down there.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. Mr. Cochran, I've often used the comparison of the 2,000 square miles. We cite that figure, and a lot of times people don't really understand the scale. And as you well know, 2,000 square miles would mean that Rhode Island would no longer exist as a state. The land area in Delaware would no longer exist. I mean, this is a massive, massive swath of land, and as we've both noted, both in your testimony and in my introduction, the significance not just to the region but to the nation. Another project that's really fundamental to establishing some type of sustainable footprint in coastal Louisiana is a project that has a long history in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the state Coastal Protection Restoration Authority, previously known as Myrtle Grove. It's now known as Mid-Barataria. And I believe you're intimately familiar with that project and also aware that there were, in that case, some regulatory waivers that were provided in order to allow the project to move forward. And I believe your previous employer supported that because recognition of urgency, recognition that the regulatory process really didn't fit that type of project. I understand your concern, or I don't know what word to use, I'll use concern, with some of the regulatory provisions. But I do want to ask, do you recognize that there's an urgency here and that perhaps the regular regulatory process doesn't really fit the urgency that we're facing in the state?
I don't have any problem recognizing that I've seen it. The challenge is how do we, what takes a lot of time is us sitting down to actually figure out how to make it work. And that's frustrating as hell. There is no reason why that we can't sit down with concerns in both directions and figure out how to make these processes work. We will lose this fight between enhanced nature that we have in climate change and the land that we live on if we don't figure out how to make these things move faster. We cannot sacrifice community engagement. we cannot sacrifice, well, I'll tell you what, so you referred to a change that was made, a waiver that was granted under the Marine Mammals Protection Act. And if you look at that language, what you find is, number one, it did not try to ignore impacts that might happen. In fact, it is required of the state to actually capture the information on that, to know what's going on, to continue to provide the information that's necessary so that we can adaptively manage for an outcome rather than just say in black and white, we're just going to exempt this. There was money required and put forward to actually do the supportive work that's necessary in order to be able to do that. So that's, I'm not holding all that as the model. I'm saying there are ways to think about how not to give away the protections that are necessary, but how to get these things done in a time that actually honors the urgency that we have here.
Speaking of time, we're out. Mr. Cochran, thank you very much. I appreciate you being here. Appreciate your testimony, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Huffman. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cochran, picking up where you left off,